Welcome to the Rise to Thrive podcast with your hosts, Linda Tate and Amelia Travis, your life resource for manifestation, wellness, and abundance. Tune in weekly to thrive daily. This week's episode coming at you. Welcome to today's episode, Conscious Money, with your Rise to Thrive podcast and hosts, Amelia Travis and myself, Linda Tate. We are so excited to be here with you today. And a topic that I just got done spending 7 years of my career in and arriving at was finance to now the topic of conscious money. And I think a compelling conversation and resource for you all today. So welcome to today's episode. And I want to start by opening the question to, what does money mean to you?
Money.
Money, money, money.
Money, man. Money's a heavy topic for a lot of people, you know. Money for me has always been a bit of a confused subject, but one that I'm working on finding clarity and empowerment around in my current life situation. I would say that today, money for me is an energetic exchange. It's a tool, one that I'm learning to make friends with and love. Because I want to invite more of it into my life. So rather than being mad and frustrated at money today, I'm trying to approach money as this friend or lover who I'm courting, who I'm trying to get to know better, so that it'll come and get in my bed and move into my house and fill up my bank account.
Flood the windows with.
Yeah. So money is currently my Tinder that I swiped right. I don't know anything about Tinder. I swiped whichever way.
Right.
Yeah. I swiped right on money. What's money to you?
Money to me also can evoke that or like the elephant on the chest sometimes. And I also have arrived to energetic exchange. Money has a lot of history and stories, and it feels great and exciting and overwhelming and stressful. And so can money feel like the bipolar third cousin, or money can feel so much, such a spectrum. But I agree with you, money as the exchange. And I wanted to talk to you about the history of money for the next hour, everyone.
Welcome to your history lesson for the day. I'll be checking out and snoozing. No, just
Did
kidding.
you know that the first coin ever featured a roaring lion on it?
I wish we still had those.
That would be cool. And the coins evolved into paper money in 1661.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine all the time before that when people had to carry around their big old bag of gold? Gold's heavy.
The first currency was made in 600 BC. And what's an interesting thought is how we didn't always exchange for money, right? So prior to that time, it was truly like an exchange, whether it was for trade, different commodity. And I think now as we come into a time where someone like ourselves saying it's an energetic exchange, and someone could say, well, what does that even mean? And it's like, well, there's a service or something that you deem of value, and then you exchange the money for, but the evolution of our experience with money. Do you have the earliest, what?
I dig that. Actually, I think that gives me a new perspective and clarity, because in my mind, the next time I'm having an adverse reaction to how much something costs, I'm going to just time travel myself back to 600 BC and be like, how many sheep do I want to trade for this thing? Or better yet, like, how many potions that I brewed in my cauldron, because I'm a healer in my 600 BC mind, like how many potions am I going to exchange for whatever this service or
like
item
seven loaves of bread for your potion.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think putting it into those terms, it kind of lifts the elephant off the chest a little bit, where it's like, oh, it's just a decision about what I perceive the value to be of something. And that feels more aligned and empowered than kind of the arbitrary numbers. I think numbers numbers in general get weird, whether it's like your weight and the numbers on the scale, or the numbers in your bank account, the number of followers on social media. Humans have a weird construct around numbers, and then how that relates to worth and value. So I dig the history lesson. That gave me some cool perspective.
And perceived, I mean, you bring up such a great point when you say perceived value, which is so individual, right? Like my perceived value of your headphones could be different than your perceived value of the headphones. And in today's world, I think there's a real opportunity to express perceived value, right? You hear whether it's trade or, I mean, there's a lot of places you can like pick the price, and it's such an interesting marketplace for whatever the exchange can be today.
Maybe in some ways hailing back towards that pre-currency system.
Well, was that the hint? I agree with you.
Interesting.
Could be. I mean, it could be a lot of things. So that's interesting. Do you have any early money memories?
Yeah, definitely. As a child, I had two very different parents with different approaches to money. My dad was super free flowing with money. He treated it as though there was always plenty. He did make a very good income. He was an attorney and he had plenty of money, but he spent it like it was just water, you know, like money came in and money went out, and he had no problem using credit cards, and he was always very free with money. My mom, on the other hand, grew up quite poor, and so her approach was always really cautious to money. And I remember being in the grocery store, and there were set price limits for things. So if chicken was over, you know, $1 a pound, or if rice cost more than $2 for the bag, we just didn't get it that week. Even though we had the money in my family, my dad had, you know, we made enough money. My mom also had a great job. She was a professor. So I think what was interesting is that from a very young age, I remember there being a conflict, an unspoken conflict between these two ways of dealing with money. And then I remember that my parents would have poker games at our house, and they would have friends over and they'd play with real money. And when my sister and I were like as young as 3 and 4, we were allowed to sit in on the penny poker games and play. They taught us to play poker when we were like 4 years old. I don't know what that says about
Taking you to Vegas with me.
But I remember, you know, even at that young age, there was part of me that was like, money's just a game, you know, it comes and goes and you can play with it and have fun, and it's kind of like not real. So I think that created some interesting long-term beliefs around money that I'm currently deconstructing. But it was like there was plenty, but also, you know, one of the parents was always worried that there wasn't going to be enough. What about you?
Well, when you said it, the idea of perceived value, of like your mom had set points of her perceived value of each of those items, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For myself, I had, when you said with that game of poker, I had a flashback to the game of Monopoly and those paper bills, and just how it felt like so much, and the same thing like felt like nothing. And that's a feeling that sometimes I still connect with and relate to, is having money can feel like so much and also feel like nothing. Not having money can feel real, not real, and connect back to maybe some of those early childhood memories. And we had these like money bowl, I guess they were jars, like literally mason jars. And it was an attempt to teach good spending and saving habits. So some were for long-term saving goals, some were for short-term, we had one called Quick Cash, and that was like to buy candy. And I forget what the fourth one was like to give to the church. So teaching like a tithing lesson. And just remembering those jars, and at a certain point I would sneak into my brother's jar and steal his money from his long term. And I remember that he would never know because he had so much, and he's never cared about money. And I was always like, oh, what can I like check out? Like, what could I buy? And it was years ago now, but I paid him back for that. And I had like calculated what I thought I had taken from him and just felt like I could give back generously. And it was something that for years I always felt really bad about. And
Yeah, did you confess the theft when you paid him back, or did you just kind of sneakily and quietly give him back what you took from him?
oh no, I confessed, or I was like found out, like my mom found out, and it was like, are you stealing money from your brother? And I was like, yeah, I need more money. And he had $500 in his long-term savings, and it was this whole thing. And in ways like that itself felt like a game, like kind of like sneaking the cookie from the cookie jar, and just this almost fun thing as a kid. I don't know. And I remember when I was old enough to realize it was messed up, I was like, I'm going to pay you back one day. And I let him know when I would. I was like, listen, you're going to start getting like X amount of money for me for a month. And thank you for letting me play my game when we were kids with allowance.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, I think everybody has a long and rich and complex relationship with money. Like as I look at how those childhood beliefs evolved through, high school, I was selling weed out of my closet and like was, money was super important to me at that time. I always wanted to be wearing the coolest, latest clothes. And, I felt like I started working as soon as I could at 14, as soon as I got a work permit, got a job, and even before that babysat. And money's always been something that I want and that I crave and that I want more of. And I like now I'm examining like, oh, that strong desire has many times been rooted in scarcity rather than being rooted in like the freedom of what I could do with the money. But it's interesting, you say you stole from your brother. I think of all the times that I jacked my parents or like, stole money out of my dad's wallet, and it was many. And then that pattern of just relying on other people to give me money continued like all the way up through, I would say 24. I was continually borrowing from the bank of dad, and went through a phase where kind of had sugar daddies and was just dating these older wealthy men just for money. And it was in many ways a very disempowered relationship with money that continued until my late 20s, when I started running my own business and realizing that like this whole money thing is an opportunity for me to step into my own power and to step into alignment and to create something healthy, where previously it's just been like what I can kind of get from others, whether that's a job or a boyfriend or a parent, transitioning into a place of what can I create and what can I give, and how can I use my money to be in service of humanity and myself. And then like the shift in terms of how much money I have and the abundance and like the income in my business has been pretty incredible after making that switch. So,
and I wonder too, I mean, I've been doing a lot of work around the subconscious belief systems around money. And when you think about creating the portals that are relying on you versus the portals open with other people and the energetics of that. So by portal meaning like your business, right? Opportunities for money to flow through you. And when you step from that space of relying on others solely to like creating that, the different that feeling is how you show up in your life.
It feels so much better. It feels clean. It feels clean. It feels healthy. It feels like freedom. Case in point, there was a coaching client, a person who wanted to be a coaching client that I met on an airplane last summer. And it was right as I was starting my premium coaching business. And so I was still in this place of discomfort in terms of telling people my rates. I felt like charging people, many thousands of dollars for one-on-one coaching was just super uncomfortable for me to do. Long story short, I didn't ask for this client. She was this woman sitting next to me on a plane, and she was peeking over my shoulder as I was working on some of my marketing content for my business. And she asked me, "Are you a coach?" And I said, "Yeah." And she's like, "I've been looking for a coach." We got into a long conversation, ended up talking for a couple hours. And before the end of that conversation, she was like, "I want to hire you. I want to give you a retainer right now. Can I give you a deposit right now?" And I was like, "If you want to be my client, heck yeah, I'll invoice you. I'll email you. I'll send you my coaching contract and an invoice." And she was like, "No, I just want to lock this down right now. Will you take cash?" And I was like, this is so weird, you know? And she's like, I'll give you $1,000 in cash right now. I was like, okay. So I took this lady's money, right? And I was elated because I felt like the universe and God had just dropped this coaching client into my lap. But on the other hand, she was asking for things that were outside the scope of what I wanted to offer in my coaching business. She was offering for me to teach, asking for me to teach her private yoga, asking for me to come to her office, asking for all of these things. And so I gave her this number that was even bigger than my regular premium coaching. I told her I was going to charge her $9,000 for the 6 months. She gave me this $1,000 in cash. And as we parted ways that night, I was experiencing partly elation, feeling like, oh, I'm going to be successful and I'm going to have clients. But then there was a big part of me that felt dirty. I felt unclean and I felt uncomfortable and I felt insecure. And an interesting thing happened. She disappeared. She fell off the face of the earth. She never responded to any of my emails. She didn't become my client and she never asked for her money back. So I was just given this free gift of $1,000. But the lesson that I learned when I signed the next client who was in alignment, who was, paying the rate that I really wanted to charge and felt good about, who received the contract first, who agreed to work within the parameters that I set, it was like that money felt so good. It felt like the best money that I'd ever earned because I knew I was really going to be in service to this woman. I knew that she was exactly my ideal client and everything had been done in like this container of alignment. So it's so interesting that you can receive money for the exact same service, similar amounts, but it can feel entirely different depending on how you were operating energetically when you received the money.
Well, and that brings up the great concept that's changed so much in my life around financial alignment in itself, but then financial alignment. And whether it's your spending decisions, work-related decisions, but checking in around the alignment of that and what kind of resistance are you creating in your own life being out of alignment. And I find as I coach others, some of their most frustrating experiences in their business often come because of misalignment. And so to be able to run through your own filter and see like of a resistant area or frustration area, what does the alignment look like? And if alignment is conceptually something that's different for you, it's like what feels, whether it's in integrity or of value, your value system, doing some discovery work around what that would mean, and then extending that to what is your own financial alignment? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think that word alignment, especially within like the wellness and yoga and personal development communities is thrown around a lot. And I think I think we all need to get clear on what alignment actually means for us. And I think you just hit on a couple key points of it. For me, to be aligned is to have my desires, thoughts, words, and actions be consistent with each other, supporting each other, and have them be honoring what is true for me in that time. And so financial alignment, it's such an interesting concept. I feel like, what does that even mean for me? Today, I think I know what some like components are of financial alignment for me. One is I check all my bank accounts every single day. I look at how much money is there because one of my patterns over the years has been kind of along those lines of treating money like a game, is just not looking at money. I mean, there were years where I literally would just not look at my bank account. I would overdraft it. I would throw money on credit cards and just ignore it. So to me today, financial alignment means I look at money. I look at my credit cards. I look at my bank accounts every day. I try to do a practice of breathing and stepping back before I spend because I'm also extremely impulsive spender. Hello, Amazon Prime addiction. Hi, my name's Amelia and I'm a Prime addict.
Hi, my name's Linda and I'm a Prime addict.
Yeah. And I think that's partly cultural. You know, I think we're in a culture right now of instant gratification, being valorized and being totally socially acceptable. So for me, financial alignment, I check my accounts. I try to breathe before I spend. I practice conscious giving, and trying, and I'm not there yet, but trying to learn to live within my means. My goal in 2019 is to be debt-free in my business and my personal life, which is something that I have not been since I got credit cards. I've never been debt-free. So that's a big declaration to even say, like, I'm ready to get there. What is financial alignment to you? Because I feel like that buzzword alignment can be something that we say, but people maybe don't necessarily always have an experiential connection with what alignment is for them, especially around finances.
Yeah, financial alignment, you know, right now being in the middle of transition of leaving my former finance career and stepping full time into coaching and podcasting and life, it feels like this question of what does financial alignment mean to me couldn't be asked at a better time. So do I have the full answer? No, but I'll give you my best answer. And before, it was really focused around investing in alignment, investing in my belief system. As it went to spending, it was like spending to the things I believed in, like shopping local when possible, being conscious in my food choices. Definitely debt, and the cycle of debt has been something that since I was 25 became part of my experience. And it was actually to pay for part of my birthday party. I wanted to have a 25th birthday party and invite my friends and do like 7 to 9 open bar. And I felt bad charging what it would have cost to cover everyone. And my parents like gave some money and I asked for some money, but there was a gap. Maybe it was $1,000. And like, that was my step into debt. And I look back and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, can I even remember that birthday party?
So probably not, because you had an open bar from 7 to 9 and spent $1,000 on food. How many people were there for you to spend $1,000 on food? Like, you probably don't remember the party.
No, the Hoboken W, my 25th birthday. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate your love. And it's just interesting, like that experience of debt, and whether it's debt or even just your experience with money, how shame can have a part of that. And also like keeping into consideration, nothing has any meaning except for the meaning you give it. It's like a Tony Robbins adage. But like in terms of debt, like, does that have to be like, whether demonized might be too far, but has like a very negative connotation. And there's a way to use debt to be very much like an investment or like a savvy way to address debt as part of an overall like financial picture. So checking in around your own definitions, which I am in process of doing, but I would say it's always been mindful spending, investing, like impact investing, and still landing on how I want to address debt. Because I ask myself, even like debt free, what does that mean? Like debt free as a goal? I don't know. You know, I have a mortgage. Like, is debt free gonna need to be like the goal for this year? And what part of debt, right? Like that you hear, like there's good and bad debt. So is it going to be like your college loans and your home payment and then consumer debt, and committing to practices where you are checking in and how do you become mindful of the spending? It's like looking at it, right? And I think feeling it, like it's easy to be disassociated. I mean, I can remember times in my life where it would be like the thrill of spending. I mean, literally getting like, just like excited to spend money. I mean, like the retail therapy and like the feeling of almost like mission accomplished. And I could feel myself probably over the last 2 years where I noticed how shopping or spending had become like sort of my latest distraction technique. You know, oh, well, I just got to check, and oh, well, this is for the house. And being able to really, like you said, breathe into it, like, is this important? And one of the things that I started doing was my Amazon, like I would do one Amazon order a month or a week. But just knowing, like, I buy on whatever day and let it be in the cart, and then when you click that order, and that allows you to filter through versus, oh, this is coming tomorrow, and adapting practices where in a month or a week or even a day worth of time blocks, there could be a designated experience of shopping so that it doesn't have to get out of hand.
Yeah, you got a lot of great tips there. And I want to touch on what you said about debt, because I do think it's important to de-villainize it and recognize that having secured debt is one component of building healthy credit, and it's part of just navigating money in today's society. Most people aren't going to buy a home or buy a vehicle with straight cash. If you can, great. But, it's not, I don't think it's that all debt is bad, but I do think that, and you might be able to speak to this from a financial advisor standpoint, carrying credit cards, maybe multiple credit cards that are exceeding, 70% of their available credit is not only a practice that it can be detrimental to your credit score, but it's also energetically heavy. To be feeling, whether you're aware of it or not, to be feeling like you are in a precarious place, that if something were to happen, and you didn't say have money to draw out of savings, that, you could be going over the limit on a credit card, and then everything that comes from that. And I think I want to say that I speak from a place of, in my early 20s, I left an abusive relationship, and I went through a phase of living entirely on credit cards. And I managed to, between the age of 21 and 23, I racked up over $100,000 of unsecured credit card debt. And it all went into collections. I defaulted on all of it. And I had to work with an attorney. One of the lovely gentlemen I dated during that period, actually really, really wonderful man, was an attorney, and he helped me negotiate and settle with all of those credit card companies for about 40% of what I owed them. But it was an extremely difficult and energetically exhausting and stressful period of life to be so deeply in unsecured debt and not have any idea of how I was going to pay it off. And that went on for many years. The accounts that I defaulted in, those that wouldn't accept a settlement, I waited. There's a statute of limitations in California anyway of 7 years, and then it no longer reports to your credit. So some of it, I just waited for it to eventually disappear. But it actually kind of took that experience for me in order for me to wake up to the necessity of having a healthy relationship with money, because I never wanted to live with that level of constant fear and stress and my phone ringing off the hook from debt collectors, So I think when I speak about becoming debt free, it is speaking specifically about eliminating credit card debt. Student loans, they can probably hang around for a little while, vehicle payment, that can hang around. But I think there's a lot of people out there that can identify with that and that have, more money than they would like to admit on a credit card, and feel scared or unsure about what to do about it and how to fix it. And it creates a cycle of like mental stuff that makes it difficult for you to get to a healthier place with money.
And it's like that feeling of being over levered, right? It's just like, wait, what? Like, how? Okay. And yeah, definitely over those credit or the utilization ratios of a credit card, like over a certain point, how detrimental that's affecting your credit score, getting to a point where you are declaring bankruptcy or in a position where it's to a point of unmanageable, and being in the system, and how do you sort of break the cycle, right? And I think that as we're talking for today's topic around conscious money, could it be, as you're experiencing money as an extension of yourself, the same like self-worth conversations and respect and different elements that you have included in your life around well-being, is it that you give, your financial well-being focus time as you would, breakfast or your workout. And that's really during my time working in wealth management that I thought, man, we're kind of missing something here. This can be so hyper focused on money. And I would see sort of the healthiest person becoming really distraught with their finances, which then led to stress, which mitigated all of the health measures. And then the opposite, where extreme wealth being completely, utilized for the material elements, and then having this major issue with health and mindset and mental health dysfunction, and how there's got to be a personal symbiotic relationship between, there doesn't have to be, but there is an option for everyone to step into their own personal well-being. That financial well-being is included.
This is something that I admire so much about you, and that I've always been grateful to have you as a friend who's able to reflect back to me the truth about financial well-being, because you were the first person who ever opened my eyes to that truth. And I just want to recap it for our listeners. You can have health and wellness in every aspect of your life. You can be in your meditation practice, going to yoga, eating, whatever you believe is the healthiest diet, plant-based, paleo, whatever you're doing. You can have all of these aspects of your life that are aligned in wellness. But if your finances are in disarray, then you're living with a perpetual level of stress and anxiety and fear, most likely, that in a sense is destabilizing everything else that you're doing for your own wellness. And only each of us as we listen can examine whether or not this is true for us. But when you go to bed at night, if there are things that are keeping you awake, or if there are things that are causing you to toss and turn, is one of those money. And so when we talk about conscious money, this isn't necessarily coming from the perspective of, I think, what a lot of, personal development and entrepreneurial leaders are focusing on, which is just, we want abundance, we want more. It's like, let's look at this from a holistic perspective of how is your relationship with money and your current financial situation really affecting your overall health in your life. And Linda, I think you have such a beautiful and unique perspective on this. And I think this is one of your greatest gifts to offer the world. And I know that it's where you feel a big part of your mission is to help people get aligned with health, wealth, and mindset. So I don't know what I want to say besides just thank you for opening my eyes to it. And maybe you have something you want to expand on for our listeners about that, about financial well-being.
All right. Lynn Twist writes the book, The Soul of Money, and being introduced to her work in addition to my career in wealth management and coming into impact investing, which can be whether socially responsible investments or environmental measures within your investments. There's a whole slew what could be considered an impact investing, but this is how my consciousness too, there's more to this conversation around money than just like saving, spending, investing. And she really introduced me to the concept around sufficiency. And when she's talking about sufficiency, that can mean different things to different people, but it like sufficient, like this is sufficient, like kind of a feeling of this is complete. And that felt so great to me, because in our society where it can feel more, and taking a pause and a gratitude pause of sufficiency and like breathing into that for a moment. And I can look around, my house and, on a walk and just feel like, wow, this is just beyond sufficient. And then the joy and gratitude that comes with that. And I explain that to you because that was a real shift for me. And she tells a beautiful story in her book about Mother Teresa and experience that she had. And it was like the depiction of like rich people being bad, and like Lynn's heart would always go out to like, those that were an underserved population. And it's like suffering doesn't discriminate. And in the human experience, suffering doesn't discriminate.
That's so true.
It can truly, in different segments and life areas, in the shades of suffering, but the essence of suffering is there for all of us as humans. And that was such a humbling moment, because as a former financial advisor, I had felt so much judgment that had come up for like almost like to the wealthy, that then created this resistance to my job. And when I could start to loosen all of that and embrace the human experience, and embrace that whether you're $100,000 in debt or you have $100 million invested, that there's a very human experience for each of these people. And that's where total mindset shift and humbling, and where financial alignment is so personal. So all the time spent judging or feeling all these different things externally, but to turn the lens back on the inside and ask myself, what is this financial alignment? And knowing that I make a difference as I'm financially aligned and personally aligned was game changer. And the other thing, and I'm realizing like this comes from some of the teachings that Lynn does, but I kind of put this together in a punny way the other day, and I'm sure I had picked it up through reading, but I was like, oh my gosh, appreciation, financial appreciation when the value of something is increasing. Well, then when you say like, I appreciate, I'm so grateful for, and appreciation creating appreciation, and how it's like energetically, when you can be in that space of gratitude and sufficiency, noticing what around you in your life is actually appreciating, so increasing in value. I mean, I could go back to the story of you on the plane, where that money exchange didn't feel the best for you, but could you have been in an energetic space of receiving and of appreciation that day to have received a gift of $1,000, right? That could have been.
Well, and that's exactly what I took as the lesson of it, looking at it in hindsight, was I was in a space where I was very much desiring to experience confirmation of my worth, my potential as a coach. And that day I had set a very clear and powerful intention to be open to receive. And then I got to have this beautiful experience with this woman, which was absolutely just so cool. And then when it didn't actually transpire into an ongoing coaching relationship, and I was looking back at it and just inquiring with myself, like, did I do something wrong, or was it just not meant to be, or what? I said, I really think that experience was just exactly what I asked for, which was the opportunity to practice receiving at a high, what I consider to be a high, number or a high amount of money. And I got that. I got exactly what I desired. And so then I was able to allow that. And I was also able to be grateful, because the way that she wanted to work together was really not the way that I wanted to work together. And so it was a win-win-win. I received the money, I got confirmation of my worth and value, which should not be external, but it is nice to have, I'm the kind of girl that needs neon signs and flashing lights and confirmation from God or the universe, like, to move forward. So it was really nice to receive that. But, this what we appreciates is something that I have been hearing and seeing us a lot in the last week. And so I'm very much receiving this message. And to even put this into, the perspective that's not necessarily related to money, if you think about just human dynamics, like energetics between people, Liana Silver in her book, Feminine Genius, writes about an experiment that she does in her retreats and in-person workshops, where she has people work together in pairs. And one of the people, they're doing an active listening exercise, and the person who's listening is instructed to, for the first 3 minutes of the conversation, appreciate the person that they're listening to, focus on the things in them that are beautiful, focus on, what they're saying that's really insightful or whatever. Just focus on them with a lens of appreciation. We all know what that feels like. We can look for the good in somebody. And then for the second 3 minutes of the conversation, they were instructed to, without giving any indication to their partner who's speaking, switch their lens to one of criticism, to a harsh lens, to be looking for fault in the other person. Now, what happened unfailingly in these pairs of people is that when the speaker was being seen with a lens of appreciation, the conversation flowed easily. They felt magnetic. They felt in their element. They were feeling articulate. And as soon as the lens switched to one of criticism and of finding fault, the person would lose their train of thought. They would stumble over their words, and they were no longer able to, they just felt like all of a sudden the person didn't like them. And so this happens in every aspect of our life, right? What we focus on, it magnifies, it grows. And if what we're focusing on is charm and beauty and grace and things that we're grateful for, and all of the goodness in the situation or in the other person, then those will expand.
Like truly.
Yes. And when we focus from a lens of criticism, which unfortunately is often our default lens, both towards ourselves and towards others, we are stifling and energetically kind of cutting off at the knees a lot of that goodness and a lot of that potential. And so it's easy or very understandable for me when I put it into that lens of human dynamics. I'm like, well, of course that makes sense. You know, when you're looking at somebody with eyes of love and seeing all the goodness in them, of course they're going to flourish and thrive. They're going to rise to thrive. But if you look at them thinking like, man, you're such a piece of poo, you know, that person's going to shrink and become smaller. And so I guess the question is, does that apply to our money?
Well, and I love this because, as I was saying, introducing sufficiency, Lynn teaches prosperity flows from sufficiency. And there's the word abundance, right? That's like the hot word right now, which is defined as an extremely plentiful or over-sufficient quantity or supply. When I read that, the first thing I think is, do I want abundance or do I want sufficiency? And I think abundance can feel like a great buzzword, and what I'm really looking for is sufficiency. And then also substance, a substance standing under everything, right? To stand under, so to have substance in my life. And then why this brings full circle, but prosperity, as I said, prosperity flowing from sufficiency, but prosperity, the degree that you are experiencing peace, health, and plenty in your world. So thinking about financial well-being as it relates to a prosperous or a full of well-being life, and then prosperity being a way of living and thinking, not just about money or things, and how poverty can be a way of living and thinking, just like prosperity is. So areas that are filled with suffering in your life, could you have some kind of poverty mindset, which also could be maybe a lack mindset. And I do want to be sure to say, like, poverty from the lens of as it compares to prosperity versus like a poverty-stricken area or the social dynamic of poverty, which when you zoom way out and the wealth disparity that we're experiencing on a global level, you know, this is such a rich and juicy conversation. But as I relate to the words of prosperity and poverty, of the way of living and thinking, the ability for each person to have a choice if they let themselves choose in each moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think getting into that conversation about poverty and social justice and the ways in which certain segments of the population, you know, do not have access to the same resources and therefore have an uphill battle in finding their own agency and autonomy and ability to create wealth, is a huge, huge, huge conversation that could be had at another time. And I do want to affirm that, you know, I think there's within kind of the American values of rugged individualism and like pull yourself up by your bootstraps and like, you know, we all have the ability to create. I think we still want to be sensitive to the fact that everybody comes to the table with different tools and a different background that they where they're starting from in order to start to approach this. But I think what we want to really encourage is the realization that conscious money it's possible for everybody to have a conscious and empowered relationship with money, no matter where you're starting from. Like you said, whether you're starting from $100,000 in debt, whether you're starting from, a home life and an upbringing and a background where you were living in poverty, like we all have the ability to write a new story when it comes to our beliefs, when it comes to, our skills and how we receive money and how we create money and all of that. So I think that, all of these different words that relate to money, talking about abundance versus sufficiency, some things that came up for me is that I want my money life to be sustainable, to be meaningful, and to be plentiful, and to be experiencing a state of contentment. So I agree with you. Like I've been throwing around the word abundance, but not feeling super identified with it, and feeling like abundance is just like a new age yoga teacher, nice way of saying like, I want to be rich as fuck. You know what I mean? But like nobody wants to say that because we're like, oh, that's not cool. Like, and you shared an exercise with us in your Wealth Expanded workshop, which I would love to, if it's a good time for it, maybe have you share, like, how do, certain words around money make you feel versus using certain other words? Is that something that you feel like you could go into right now?
If this is something that you want to be guided through going through this exercise, please reach out to me directly, but I'll be happy to introduce this exercise. What I found was words have so much power, as I didn't find that like as the earth-shattering
she invented that.
I invented words having power. But how we relate to money and some of the different words we use around this conversation. So words like prosperity, abundance, rich, wealthy, money, and noticing how you define each of those for yourself. And I led a guided experience around this. So you're actually self-defining each of these words and noticing the conflict. And in that practice, being able to see, oh, where is there a little bit of work? If prosperity feels great and money or wealth feels, oh, gross, there's this disassociation or this inner conflict that you could be experiencing. And as we started this conversation around your earliest money memories, I mean, there's stuff that you could have picked up not only from your childhood, but going through, generationally to your parents and your parents' childhood and your parents' parents, and how that could show up in your own life, locking in to your experience at a young age, how you then have self-defined and carried those closely with you, and how that affects your spending experience, your saving experience, your overall money experience, could shed a lot of light. So please take some time for some journaling if you have that. I read this amazing book by Pam Grout, who writes Think and Grow Rich. And she introduces capital, so money or capital being different words that you could use to exchange. And she shares 5 different types of capital: alchemic, spiritual, creative, adventure, and social. And to expand also the definition of money to include some of these different types of capital. And briefly, and if you go out and get the book, a great read, but alchemic, your own change, your own inner magic; spiritual, your own bliss, your own charm, your connection to God, infinite power; creative, how you bring new things to life and bring your gifts to the surface; adventure being how you choose joy; and unfamiliar experience in your life. And lastly, social and the people that you surround yourself with. And her encouragement is to take a look at your own experience of these different types of capital in your own life, and not so much of just, the money and dollar signs of the bank account, but how rich you truly are through these 5 different means. And that resonated so much, and I think is a great lead into any type of gratitude or thankfulness practice that you might incorporate, being able to sort of check the boxes or even cultivate a sense of each of these in your life.
I think that is so important, because there are many different ways of being supported and sustained. And these various types of capital are part of our sustenance, right? And sustenance is not just our financial sustenance. It's not just whether we're nourished and taken care of in terms of our bank account, but it is also our emotional well-being, our mental well-being. Are we being supported and sustained emotionally, spiritually, socially, and in all of those ways? So I think that when we consider the wealth that we have in terms of our spirit, our creativity, our sense of adventure, and our social life, and familial relations and friends, we might find that we are so wealthy, and
you got so many more dollar signs than you ever knew.
So many more than you ever knew. And remembering, like, as you said, that there are people who are in a much higher income bracket who may be starving in terms of these other forms of capital. They might be quite poor in terms of their social capital, their adventure capital, their creative capital. And so what life do you truly want to experience? I know that for me, I would not forego the alchemic, spiritual, creative, adventure, or social capital. I would not give up any of those if it meant having a bunch of money but not having my relationship with God. If it meant having a bunch of money but not having my power of creative expression. If it meant having a bunch of money but not having amazing friendships and love relationships. Like, I don't want that, So
you don't want a bunch of dirty paper sitting around your house.
No, man, I'd be like Scrooge McDuck. You remember Scrooge?
And that's interesting. With the money, it's like you don't actually want a bunch of paper, dirty paper. You want what that could give you, the feeling that could give you.
Mm-hmm. And so that goes back to our conversations about the magic of manifestation, which is, can you tap into the feeling, what you imagine the feeling would be of having the money? Can you tap into that feeling now? No matter what your bank account looks like, can you sit and get quiet and focus on what it would feel like to have the freedom to buy the plane ticket to go somewhere tomorrow, to be able to buy your loved one the Jeep or the car that you want to buy them, to be able to pay off your parents' mortgage, or pay off your own mortgage, or whatever. But really, it always comes back to freedom. It comes back to freedom and expansion, and just that deep sense of contentment and well-being in your spirit, knowing that you're provided for, that you're taken care of, and that everything is going to be okay, right? That's because, we're all going to depart from this world at some point, and when you do, I'm not sure that being buried in a coffin full of money is the goal. Pretty sure that's not the goal. Maybe for some people.
Not on my goal list right now.
Wow. So I think that's a really powerful takeaway. A couple powerful takeaways that we have today is one, to consider your background and your relationship with money and the beliefs that you have that maybe go back as far as your childhood or even earlier than that, generational beliefs in your family. And also just recognizing that, money is this topic that we are socialized to not talk about. It's rude. It's like something that is very taboo and people are uncomfortable with it. It's kind of like sex, like we build up this mystique around it and everybody wants it. And we believe it's going to be really good when we have it, but we don't want to talk about it or look at it. And we wonder how much other people are getting, and
told not to talk about it. I mean, trained not to talk about it.
Yeah. So I think one of our first things that we can each do is just start to empower ourselves in our own relationship with money. One exercise that I found super helpful recently was writing a letter to money, as though money were my boyfriend. Sorry to my husband. I have a boyfriend. His name is Money. But it was interesting because that was actually how the relationship appeared when I wrote this letter. It was like, hey, Money, like, I haven't been really that good to you. I've been ignoring you. You know, I want you to come when I want you, but then I don't want to look at you. And everybody's letter would look differently, but just free writing a letter to Money, explaining, you know, where your relationship is right now, where maybe it's been in the past, and where you would like it to go. That can be a really powerful way to just kind of let some stuff come to the surface that maybe you weren't even looking at. And then examining these different words. So, you know, abundance versus sufficiency. What is prosperity, wealth, richness, abundance? What do those things mean to you?
And how you would define your own financial alignment.
Mm-hmm. And then practicing appreciation. And that's something that you can do in your relationship with money and with everything else in your life, but just remembering that what we focus on expands. So in each moment, tapping into, especially when you feel like something is lacking, maybe tapping into an awareness of all of the other kinds of capital that you are currently flush with, and finding one area to just appreciate and experience gratitude and notice the beauty of. Is another powerful tool. So there's so much great stuff here. I know that, you know, you have an opportunity for people to go deeper in their relationship and their examination of their relationship with money coming up. Is that something that you want to share with us today?
Yes, so I offer a 1-hour workshop and then a 4-session program called Wealth Expanded. The workshop is basically the introduction to the process, and the 4 sessions meet over the course of 2 months. And so if you go to lilalife.co and click on Wealth Expanded, there's the information for that. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me directly. It's going to be a great journey where you uncover some of those limiting belief systems and stories that you might have picked up along the way, define and redefine, as we talked about today, some of those definitions that could be holding you back, and then put into place a tactical action plan for yourself that could help adjust your trajectory and help you with your path moving forward. And there is a promo code RISE to all our listeners today for that special program. Also, yes.
You guys can find all the information about that and the link to sign up in the show notes. I just want to give a quick testimonial and say that I had the opportunity and the privilege to participate in the Wealth Expanded workshop with Linda in early November, and I gained so much value from it. You know, an opportunity to examine those limiting beliefs. But from just a tangible standpoint, I want to say that November was a huge month for my business. The things that I became aware of in that workshop led to an over $20,000 month in November. And I do credit that, which is a big month for me. And I do credit that to just the shift that happened mentally, emotionally, and spiritually from that workshop. So I highly recommend it if you guys are in any kind of place of just recognition that you want to fall more in love with money and develop a healthier relationship. I think that workshop is a really awesome place to start. That's all. You're
Thanks.
great.
Thanks, Siska. I want to close out today's episode with our book of the day for our book club.
Suck it to me, sis.
I mentioned it already. It's called The Soul Money by Lynn Twist. And I want to empower everyone with this beautiful quote that you can find in the book. Money is like water. It can be a conduit for commitment, a currency of love. Money moving in the direction of our highest commitments nourishes our world and ourselves. What you appreciate appreciates. When you make a difference with what you have, it expands. Collaboration creates prosperity. True abundance flows from enough, never from more. Money carries our intention. If we use it with integrity, then it carries integrity forward. Know the flow. Take responsibility for the way your money moves in the world. Let your soul inform your money and your money express your soul. Access your assets, not only money, but also your own character and capabilities, your relationships, and other non-money resources.
Holy moly. That's some good stuff. I had to give it some snaps because it was so good.
Some big snaps.
Yeah, money carries our intention. I think that is so, so powerful. That's going to be my money mantra going forward for the rest of this month, is just to remember that money carries our intention. And my intention is to be in service to humanity, to empower women, and to create more love in the world, really to love people. That's always my overarching mission. So this month I'm going to see how money can carry my intention of loving people. That's going to be
the currency of love.
Yes. Well, Linda, thank you so much for sharing
Amelia.
Beautiful conversation about conscious money. Thank you to our listeners. We love you guys already so much. We're so grateful for you who are joining us early on in this journey, and we're just excited to converse with you guys more. So if you have any requests, comments, feedback, we would love to hear from you. You can connect with us on social media, on Instagram at Rise to Thrive Podcast. You can send us an email. I don't know. Connect with us. We love you guys. We want to talk to you more. If you like this, please subscribe so that you can get more gems weekly to help you
thrive daily.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. This has been episode 2 of Rise to Thrive Podcast, and we're looking forward to chatting with you guys again next week. That's it. Have a great day.